Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin. First up, 2 killed, 1 injured when car strikes utility pole in Nashua. Let's take a listen to this video from WMUR News 9, Ray Brewer.
Out the door when it matters most. For more than a decade, he's been right there, everywhere. And when American jobs are on the line, he leads the charge. ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast, and we thank you.
Throughout the early morning, Nashua officers worked to reconstruct the accident on Bridge Street. Tim Fisher was walking his dog when he heard squealing tires and saw a car sliding across the road.
And it just slid across the street, hit the telephone pole, kind of went up the embankment of the telephone pole, and then just split in half.
The car then plowed into a truck parked next to the telephone pole.
The truck was parked right here. I don't know if you can see the marks. And it was pushed right over there, and it, as you can see the damage, it destroyed a couple of customer cars that were parked here.
Fisher says he immediately called police and that there were 3 people in the car. Police say 2 of them died at the scene. Fisher says he didn't notice the 3rd at first.
I initially thought it was just debris from the accident because he was curled up in a fetal position.
He tried to reach his hand up to me to get me to breathe, and I couldn't. I tried to get him to stay on the ground as long as I could to get paramedics to come out.
Michael Thorne says he was the 3rd person on the scene and is having trouble dealing with what he saw. As it turned out, he knew one of the people who died. You can see those flowers that have been placed on the pole there. Just talked to the gentleman who placed them there. He said he didn't know the people involved, but came by the accident scene last night and felt compelled to do something. Now, police have not released the names of any of those involved. That may happen once the autopsies are complete. They are scheduled for tomorrow. Reporting live in Nashua, Ray Brewer, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Dozens of New England Papagino's locations closed. Company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Let's take a listen to the video from WCVB Boston.
Stunning changes for a local chain today. Papagino's has abruptly shut down dozens of locations.
Customers found signs on the doors of the pizza shops today. And News Center 5's Julie Lonchik is live in Newton at one of those restaurants. Julie?
Customers and employees, Todd, good evening to you. Yes, this Newton location, one of several dozen across the New England area that closed without warning this morning. We've heard from a number of employees who showed up to work bright and early this morning to open their respective restaurants and were met with the bad news. We've learned nearly 50 pizzerias shut down seemingly overnight. Papagino's had 150 locations in New England, but their website now only reflects about 97. The company was started in East Boston back in 1961 under the name Piece of Pizza and formally became known as Papagino's in 1968. We spoke with the manager of the Beverly location by phone. She's out of state on vacation and tells me she did not see this coming.
We had a couple of people going to open a location, and they came in, they sat them down, and they said, unfortunately, we've decided to, close down some of the locations. This one happens to be one of them. There should have been, more time. I understand that companies do what they have to do, but We would have loved a heads up, that's all.
Chloe says she was offered relocation, but other employees have told us they were not. Now, we did reach out to Papa Gino's, the parent company, for a response. We have not yet heard back.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And as you know, tomorrow is Election Day all over the United States. Everything you need to know about Election Day 2018 in Maine. For the governor race to U.S. Senate, Maine's congressional district, and major ballot questions, voters have a lot to decide on Election Day 2018. Here is everything to know before heading to the polls. Ranked choice voting effort. Mainers will use two voting methods on Election Day. Ranked choice voting will be used in the race for U.S. Senate and the 1st and 2nd congressional districts. If a candidate receives 50% plus 1 in the initial tally, that candidate is the winner. If no candidate receives 50% plus 1, then voters are to vote in rounds, with the lowest ranked candidate eliminated in each round until there are only 2 candidates left. The one who is determined to have received the majority of the votes is declared the winner. Because of Maine Supreme Court ruling, ranked choice voting will not be used in the governor's race and the race for Maine legislature. The Supreme Court ruled that the use of ranked choice voting for the governor race in the general election would validate the state constitution, in which says the governor must be elected by plurality. Maine governor. 3 candidates are vying to be the next governor of Maine. Independent Terry Hayes, Democratic Janet Mills, and Republican Sean Moody are seeking to replace Republican Governor Paul LePage. Mills and Moody are seen as the front-runners in the race. Unlike in the June primary, ranked choice voting will not be used to determine the winner. U.S. Senate. Independent U.S. Senator Angus King is facing a challenge from 2 candidates as he seeks a second term. Republican Eric Barkey and Democrat Zach Regisley are seeking to unseat King, who was first elected in 2012. King is a heavy favorite to re-election. If no candidate receives 50% plus 1, the race will be decided by ranked choice voting. U.S. House District First Seat. 2 people, including a familiar opponent, are challenging Democrat Rep. Charlie Pigry for Maine's 1st congressional district. Republican Mark Holbrook, who lost Pigry 2 years ago, is on the ballot, along with independent Martin Gorham. If no candidate receives 50 plus 1, the race will be decided by ranked choice voting. U.S. House 2nd District. Incumbent Republican Rep. Bruce Paulin is facing a challenge from 3 candidates as he seeks a 3rd term to represent Maine's 2nd District in Congress. Paulin is being challenged by Democrat Jared Golden, and independent Tiffany Bond and William Hoare. The race is expected to be a very close between Paulwyn and Golden. If no candidate receives 50% plus, the race will be decided by ranked choice voting. And here's a look at question 1 for the ballot. Let's take a look. This is question 1. Statewide bond questions, county races, and city/town races. And now let's take a look at your U.S. stock market and see how U.S. stock market closed for this Monday evening. Your Dow Jones Industrial Average closed in the green and went up. Your Nasdaq closed in the red and went down. S&P 500 closed in the green and went up. Gold closed in the red and went down. Oil closed in the red and went down. US 10-year closed in the red and went down. Euro/USD closed in the green and went up. And VIX closed in the green and went up. Dow rises nearly 200 points as Berkshire Hathaway jumps, but Apple drags down Nasdaq. The Dow Industrial Average and S&P 500 rose on Monday as gains in Berkshire Hathaway bowed the broader financial sector. Governor Hopefuls says opponent abused power with cooked-up hacking allegations. Let's take a listen to this video from ABC News. Whoops, sorry about that. Hold on. Having a little technical difficulties with the sound on here. Give me 1 minute, everyone.
Kemp declined, but we are joined by the Democrat, Stacey Abrams. Ms. Abrams, thank you for joining us this morning. We saw the Georgia Democratic Party call that not only a lie, this new investigation call from Secretary Kemp, but they're calling it an abuse of power. Do you think Secretary Kemp deliberately cooked up the charge to help his campaign?
I do. In fact, I think he cooked up the charge because he realizes once again he has left 6 million voters' information vulnerable. And this has happened twice before. This is another failure of his leadership, and he recognizes that if he got caught 2 days before the election having exposed so many Georgians, he would lose. And so he did what he does always, blame someone else for his mistakes.
That's a pretty serious charge, abuse of power right there. I also want to ask you about the racist robocall. It has been denounced by Secretary Kemp. Do you accept that repudiation?
I think it's a little late for him to repudiate racist remarks, given that he stood with someone wearing an anti-Islam T-shirt. He refused to denounce the same man earlier who accused black veterans of not being people who should support our country. I think, unfortunately, Secretary Kemp has not only abused his power, he's failed to do his job. And you don't deserve a promotion when you do not serve the people you've been hired to serve. Just this week, he was hit twice by federal lawsuits where the federal judges agreed with voters that he had failed to do his job, allowing them to cast their ballots. You don't deserve a promotion when you fail to do your work.
Are you concerned these racist appeals are going to work?
What I'm concerned about is that his overarching architecture of voter suppression, of ostracization, of demeaning and dehumanizing people, that can cause people to think that their votes don't count, which is why we've been so aggressive about telling people the best antidote to his antics is to actually turn out and engage. And we've seen unprecedented voter turnout because people understand that education and jobs and access to affordable health care are on the ballot this year, and that I'm the only candidate with a comprehensive plan for how we move our state forward together.
How about President Trump? In May, he called you part of the extreme far left. He said if you get elected, the Second Amendment is gone, and you would turn Georgia into a sanctuary city for criminal aliens. Your response?
My response is that he is completely wrong. Number one, I believe in the Second Amendment. I know how to shoot a gun, but I believe in responsible gun ownership. And as we've seen in recent weeks, in fact, over the last few years, it is time for us to have common sense gun safety legislation. I support the fact that the federal government needs to take action on immigration. But in the state of Georgia, my responsibility will be to protect all people in our state. And most importantly, I want to expand Medicaid because we have failed in the state of Georgia to do what's right by all people. 500,000 Georgians stand to get access to health care, and we can save 20 rural hospitals in our state. These are important core values that all Georgians share. Education, jobs, access to health care. There's nothing radical about this except that we have Republican leaders who do not want to do that job.
On the Second Amendment, you have supported legislation that would call on people to turn in their assault weapons.
I've supported legislation that responded to massacres across our country and said that we have to take action on assault weapons. As I said yesterday, and will always say, we want to introduce legislation to start the conversation, but the legislative process often leads to common results where people can work together on how we achieve our goals. I'm open to any conversation that will make our community safer, but I think we have to begin with the fundamental premise that assault weapons do not belong on our streets.
If you win, you'll be the first black governor of Georgia, America's first African-American woman governor. What kind of message would that send?
I think it will send an incredibly strong message that the face of leadership is evolving in the United States. That doesn't mean anyone is being pushed out. It simply means that more are being added to the conversation. And I hope that I'm just the first of many. More people who stand up and understand that our voices and our votes matter, and that we can not only cast those ballots, we can stand for office.
Stacey Abrams, thanks very much for your time this morning. And I should say once again...
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We should say that we did invite Secretary Kemp on the program. He declined.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And by the way, don't forget to join me tonight for a special Election Eve coverage right here on the Riley King Network. And that's it for the Riley King Newscast right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all enjoyed this edition of the Riley King Newscast. And as you see, I am trying something new, delivering the news standing up. We're going to try some new things during the newscast now. Have a great night, everyone, and see you tomorrow for another newscast. I'll have a news report coming up in a little bit. Goodbye.